Captain Richard Sterling thought he was the god of the sky. With 30 years of flight time and a pristine record at Pan-Atlantic Airlines, he believed his word was law. So, when he saw 17-year-old Maya trying to sit in seat 1A of his first-class cabin, he didn't see a brilliant student. He saw a problem. He saw someone who didn't belong. He grounded a fully loaded Boeing 777, delayed hundreds of passengers, and called security just to humiliate a quiet teenager. He thought he had all the power. But Sterling didn't know who was running across the tarmac. He didn't know that the man in the orange NASA flight jacket wasn't just a dad. He was the man who owned the sky Sterling was trying to fly in. And when that cabin door opened, karma didn't just knock, it broke down the door. The air inside the jet bridge at Chicago O'Hare smells like industrial carpet and kerosene, a scent that usually made 17-year-old Maya tense up. But today, it smelled like victory. She adjusted the strap of her canvas messenger bag, her fingers brushing against the worn fabric. Inside that bag wasn't a tablet or a makeup kit. It was a prototype gyroscope stabilizer she had 3D printed herself, wrapped in layers of bubble wrap. "Boarding Group 1, the gate agent announced, her voice crackling over the intercom. "First-class passengers, welcome aboard." Maya took a deep breath. She looked down at her boarding pass. Seat 1A. She wasn't supposed to be here, not in this luxury. Maya was used to the back of the bus, the middle seat in economy, the struggle for overhead bin space. But her father, Marcus, had insisted. "This is the big one, baby girl," he had told her over the phone last night, his voice tinny due to the bad reception at the base. "You're presenting to the committee in Houston. You need to be rested. You need to be sharp. I used my miles, all of them. Don't argue with your old man." She stepped onto the plane. The transition was immediate, from the humid tunnel to the crisp, conditioned air of the Boeing 777. The lighting was soft, amber and blue. "Welcome aboard," a flight attendant said. Her name tag read Sarah. She smiled, but as her eyes drifted from Maya's face down to her sneakers, clean but definitely not designer, and her oversized hoodie, the smile faltered for a fraction of a second. "Can I see your boarding pass, miss?" Maya held it out. Sarah scanned it. The machine beeped green. "Seat 1A, Sarah said, her eyebrows lifting slightly. "Right this way, to your left." Maya moved into the cabin. It was huge. The seats were like pods, private little sanctuaries of leather and wood grain. Most of the passengers were already settled or stowing expensive leather carry-ons. There was an older man in a bespoke suit, sipping whiskey, and a woman in cashmere tapping furiously on an iPad. Maya felt the eyes. It was a sensation she was used to. The "what are you doing here?" stare. She kept her head high, found 1A, and slid her canvas bag under the seat in front of her. She sat down. The leather was cool and soft. She felt like she was sinking into a cloud. "Just relax," she told herself. "Review your notes. The presentation is at 2 p.m. She pulled out a battered notebook, the cover covered in equations and stickers of planets. Suddenly, the cockpit door opened. Captain Richard Sterling stepped out. He was a tall man, broad-shouldered, with silver hair that was perfectly coiffed. He wore his 4 stripes like a crown. Sterling was a legend at Pan-Atlantic, or at least he told everyone he was. He was known for his efficiency, his smooth landings, and his absolute intolerance for disorder. He began his pre-flight walkthrough, glancing at the passengers with a practiced, cursory nod. Nod. Smile. Nod. Then he stopped at row 1. He looked at Maya. Maya looked up, offering a polite, shy smile. "Good morning," she whispered. Sterling didn't smile back. His blue eyes, cold as stratospheric ice, narrowed. He looked at her hoodie. He looked at the battered notebook. He looked at the canvas bag shoving out slightly from under the seat. He turned to Sarah, the flight attendant, who was organizing champagne glasses in the galley. "Sarah," Sterling said, his voice low but carrying that baritone authority that demanded attention. "Why is there a coach passenger in my first-class cabin?" Sarah froze. "Captain." "Seat 1A." Sterling gestured with his chin, not even looking at Maya anymore. "She's in the wrong seat. Escort her to row 40, where she belongs. We have a VIP manifest today, and I don't want the cabin cluttered." Maya's stomach dropped. The heat rose in her cheeks. "Excuse me," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I have a ticket. This is my seat." Sterling turned back to her slowly. He looked at her like she was a stain on his pristine upholstery. "Miss," Sterling said, using a tone one might use with a slow child or a disobedient dog. "First class is for full fare-paying customers and elite status members. It is not for upgrades that slip through the cracks or stowaways." "I'm not a stowaway," Maya said, her hands gripping her notebook so hard her knuckles turned white. She fumbled for her phone to pull up the digital pass again. "My dad bought this ticket. It's paid for." "Your dad?" Sterling let out a short, dry chuckle. It was a cruel sound. "And who is your dad? A baggage handler who found a voucher on the floor." The man in the bespoke suit across the aisle snickered. Maya felt tears pricking her eyes, but she bit her lip. "Don't cry. Do not cry." "My father is an engineer," Maya said firmly. "Right," Sterling said, dismissively. He checked his watch. "Sarah, check her pass again, and check the system. I want to know how she got up here. If it's a system error, fix it. If she snuck up here while the gate agent was distracted, call security." "Captain," Sarah said, looking uncomfortable. "I scanned her. It beeped green. It's valid." "I don't care what the machine says," Sterling snapped, his face flushing slightly. He hated being questioned. "Look at her. Look at this." He kicked the canvas bag lightly with his polished shoe. "Does this look like a first-class passenger to you?" "She's making the other guests uncomfortable." He leaned down, his face inches from Maya's. "Listen to me, young lady. I run a tight ship. I don't know what game you're playing, but it ends now. Grab your trash, go back to economy, or get off my plane." Maya froze. The injustice of it settled in her chest like a heavy stone. She looked at the open cockpit door, then back at Sterling. "No," she said. The cabin went silent. The lady in cashmere stopped typing. The man with the whiskey put his glass down. Sterling blinked. "Excuse me?" "I said no," Maya repeated, her voice shaking but gaining volume. "I have a ticket. I have an assignment to get to in Houston. I am not moving." Sterling straightened up to his full height. His jaw clenched. He wasn't used to no. He was used to "Yes, Captain," and "Right away, Captain." "You want to play it the hard way?" Sterling hissed. "Fine." He turned around and marched back into the cockpit, grabbing the interphone. "Ground control, this is Pan Atlantic 402. We have a disruptive passenger refusing crew instructions, requesting airport police to the gate immediately. I am holding the flight." He slammed the phone back into its cradle and turned to look at Maya through the open door. "Nobody is going to Houston until you are off this aircraft." 10 minutes passed, then 20. The atmosphere in the first-class cabin had shifted from awkward silence to open hostility, but the hostility wasn't entirely directed where Captain Sterling had hoped. "This is ridiculous," the woman in cashmere muttered. She leaned forward. Captain Sterling, I have a connection in Houston to Tokyo. We are 20 minutes past departure." Sterling emerged from the cockpit again, looking smug. He stood at the front of the cabin, arms crossed. "I apologize for the delay, folks, but federal aviation regulations are clear. We cannot push back with a non-compliant passenger on board. As soon as this young lady decides to follow the rules, we'll be on our way." He was weaponizing the other passengers against her. It was a classic bully tactic. "Hey, kid," the man with the whiskey grumbled, turning to Maya. "Just move back, all right? You're holding up people who actually have places to be." "I have places to be too," Maya shot back. She pulled out her phone. 10% battery. She had forgotten to charge it in the chaos of the morning. She frantically started typing a text to her dad. "Dad, the pilot is kicking me off. He says I don't belong in first class. He called the police. I'm scared." The text failed to send. No signal. Sterling had turned off the Wi-Fi. 2 airport police officers walked down the jet bridge. They were large men, looking tired and annoyed. They stepped onto the plane. "Where's the problem, Captain?" the older officer asked. "Seat 1A, Sterling pointed a finger at Maya like a loaded gun. "Refusing crew instructions. Trespassing in a secure cabin. I want her removed." The officer looked at Maya. She looked tiny in the large leather seat, clutching her notebook. "Miss," the officer said, stepping closer. "Is this true?" "No." Maya stood up, her legs shaking. "I have a ticket. Look." She held out her phone, showing the boarding pass. "Zone 1, Seat 1A. My name is Maya Vance. I didn't do anything wrong. He just looked at me and told me to leave." The officer took the phone. He looked at it, then looked at Sterling. "Captain, this looks valid," the officer said. "If she has a ticket, it's a fraudulent ticket." Sterling lied smoothly. He didn't know if it was, but he was committed now. His ego wouldn't let him back down. She manipulated the system, or she stole it. Regardless, as the pilot in command, I have deemed her a security risk. She was belligerent with the flight crew. Sarah, the flight attendant, gasped quietly. "Captain, she wasn't really." Sterling shot Sarah a look that said, "Speak and you're fired." Sarah looked down at her shoes. "I have the authority to remove anyone who threatens the safety of this flight," Sterling said, stepping closer to the officer, using his height and his stripes to intimidate. "She is aggressive. She is refusing orders. Remove her. Now." The officer sighed. He knew the law. The pilot in command had the final say, even if he was being a jerk. If the pilot said she doesn't fly, she doesn't fly. "Miss," the officer said gently, "you have to come with us. We can sort this out at the gate, but you can't stay on the plane." "But I have a presentation," Maya cried, tears finally spilling over. "I need to get to Houston. My dad is going to be so mad if I miss this." "Grab your bag," the officer said, reaching for her arm. "Don't touch my bag," Maya shouted, pulling the canvas bag closer. "It's fragile." "She's got a weapon," Sterling shouted, seizing the moment. "Check that bag." The officer grabbed the bag. Maya screamed. The bag ripped. Out tumbled the gyroscope. It was a complex mess of wires, titanium rings, and 3D printed plastic. To the uneducated eye, it looked suspicious. To Sterling, it looked like vindication. "Bomb!" the man with the whiskey yelled, scrambling over his seat. Panic erupted. People started screaming. "It's a stabilizer!" Maya screamed, trying to gather the pieces. "It's for a science competition! Stop it!" "Get her off! Get her off now!" Sterling roared, his face red with faux righteous fury. The officers grabbed Maya by the arms. They dragged her out of the seat. She was crying, kicking, her notebook falling to the floor, her prototype scattered across the first-class carpet. They hauled her toward the door. Sterling stood there, a smirk playing on his lips. He had won. He had exerted his dominance. He watched as they dragged the crying girl into the jet bridge. "Clear the cabin of that debris," Sterling ordered Sarah, pointing at the shattered science project. "And tell the tower we are ready to push in 5 minutes." He turned to go back into the cockpit. He felt powerful. Then he saw it through the cockpit window. A black SUV had just torn across the tarmac, ignoring all the safety lanes. It screeched to a halt right next to the tug that was attached to the plane's front gear. Blue and red lights were flashing, but not police lights. These were federal government plates. Sterling frowned. What the hell is this? He watched as the door of the SUV flew open. A man stepped out. He was a tall black man. He wasn't wearing a suit. He was wearing flight coveralls, bright orange, with patches. And over the coveralls, a bomber jacket with a very specific, very famous logo on the back. The NASA meatball insignia. The man didn't look happy. In fact, he looked like he was about to tear the plane apart with his bare hands. He looked up at the cockpit window, and for a second, Sterling felt a chill go down his spine that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. The man ran toward the stairs leading up to the jet bridge. Inside the jet bridge, the scene was chaotic. Maya was pressed against the wall, handcuffed now because she had struggled. The officers were radioing for backup. "Please," Maya sobbed. "Call my dad. Please, just call him." "We'll call your parents when we get to the station, kid," the officer said. "You brought a suspicious device on a plane. It's a gyroscope." Suddenly, the door from the tarmac stairs, the service entrance used by crew and mechanics, slammed open with a deafening bang. The officers spun around, hands on their holsters. Marcus Vance stood in the doorway. He was breathing hard. He took in the scene in a microsecond. His daughter, crying, handcuffed. The officers looming over her. "Get your hands off her," Marcus said. His voice wasn't loud, but it was terrifyingly calm. It was the voice of a man who has solved problems while falling through the atmosphere at Mach 25. "Sir, stay back!" the officer yelled. "This is a secure area." "I said," Marcus stepped forward, ignoring the hand on the gun. "Get your hands off my daughter." The officer hesitated. He looked at the man's attire. The orange flight suit. The ID badge hanging around his neck that read, "Level 5 clearance. Johnson Space Center." And the jacket. "Dad!" Maya cried. Marcus looked at her, his eyes softening for a split second before turning back to Steele. "Are you hurt, Maya?" "They broke it," she sobbed. "They broke the stabilizer. And the pilot. He said I didn't belong." Marcus's jaw tightened. A vein pulsed in his temple. He looked at the officers. "Uncuff her. Now." "Sir." She caused a disturbance on the flight. The captain ordered her removal. She had a suspicious device. "Suspicious device?" Marcus scoffed. He walked over, knelt down, and picked up a piece of the shattered plastic. "This is a gyroscopic stabilizer for a Mars rover prototype. I helped her solder the circuit board last night. She's heading to the National Junior Aerospace Finals in Houston. I bought the ticket." He stood up and looked the officer in the eye. "I am Colonel Marcus Vance, NASA Mission Commander. And that girl is the smartest person in this airport. Now, uncuff her, or I will have the Department of Homeland Security down here, so fast your head will spin." The officers looked at each other. They realized they had made a massive mistake. The older officer quickly fished for his keys. "Sir, we were just following the captain's orders. He said she was a threat." "The captain?" Marcus repeated the word like it was poison. He looked down the jet bridge toward the open plane door. "Is that so?" The cuffs clicked off. Maya rushed into her father's arms. He held her tight, kissing the top of her head. "It's okay, baby. I got you. I got you." "I'm going to miss the presentation," she whispered. "And the stabilizer is broken." "We'll fix it," Marcus said. "And you won't miss anything." He gently pulled away from her and turned toward the plane. "Sir, you can't go on there," the officer said weakly. Marcus didn't even acknowledge him. He strode down the jet bridge, his boots thudding heavily on the metal floor. He walked right through the plane door. Sarah, the flight attendant, was picking up the last pieces of the notebook. She looked up and gasped. Marcus Vance filled the doorway. He looked around the first-class cabin. The passengers went silent. They saw the flight suit. They saw the rage. "Where is he?" Marcus asked. Captain Sterling was just coming out of the cockpit, a cup of coffee in his hand. He looked up. He saw the black man in the orange flight suit. Sterling froze. The coffee cup rattled in the saucer. He didn't just recognize the uniform. He recognized the man. 5 years ago, Sterling had applied to the shuttle program. He had made it to the final interview. He had sat across a table from a board of directors. And the man who had failed him, the man who had looked at Sterling's psych evaluation and told him he lacked the temperament and humility to be an astronaut, was the man standing in his cabin right now. "Colonel Vance?" Sterling stammered. The arrogance evaporated instantly, replaced by a sickly, pale fear. "Sterling," Marcus said. His voice boomed through the silent cabin. "I see you haven't changed, still bullying people you think are smaller than you." I didn't know she was your daughter," Sterling said, his voice rising in panic. She was non-compliant. She had a messy bag." "You delayed my flight," Marcus said, stepping closer. "You assaulted my child, and you profiled a minor." "I did no such thing," Sterling tried to rally, looking at the passengers for support. "I was protecting the safety of this aircraft." "Safety?" Marcus laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "Sterling, do you know why this flight is cleared for a direct vector to Houston? Do you know why you have priority landing clearance?" Sterling blinked. I assumed it was VIP traffic." "It is." Marcus pointed a thumb at himself. "Me and her. I'm flying down to oversee the final thruster tests for the Artemis mission. I sent Maya ahead so she could compete. And you..." Marcus leaned in, his face inches from Sterling's. "You just kicked the future of astrophysics off your plane because you didn't like a hoodie." Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out a phone. "I'm calling the FAA, and then I'm calling your CEO. I believe his name is Robert. We play golf on Tuesdays." Sterling's knees actually buckled. He reached out to the bulkhead to steady himself. "Colonel, please, let's discuss this. We can get her back on. I'll upgrade her. Well, she's already in first. I'll apologize." "Oh, you're not going to apologize to me," Marcus said. "And you're not flying this plane." Marcus turned to the stunned first-class cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the inconvenience. But this aircraft is not going anywhere with this man in the cockpit. Does anyone have a problem with a short delay while we find a pilot who doesn't get his kicks bullying teenage girls?" The woman in cashmere stood up. She looked at Sterling with disgust. "Take all the time you need, Colonel." The man with the whiskey raised his glass. Here, get him out." Sterling looked around. His kingdom had crumbled. "Get your bag, Sterling," Marcus said softly. "You're done." The silence in the first-class cabin was heavy, broken only by the hum of the auxiliary power unit and Captain Sterling's ragged breathing. He looked at the passengers, the people he thought were his peers, his audience. They were looking at him with a mix of pity and revulsion. "You can't do this," Sterling hissed, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "I am the pilot in command. By federal law, I have jurisdiction over this aircraft until the doors are sealed." "And I," said a voice from the cockpit behind him, "am relieving you of duty, Captain." Sterling spun around. First Officer Dan Miller was standing in the cockpit doorway. Miller was young, sharp, and had spent the last 2 years biting his tongue every time Sterling went on a rant about millennials or diversity hires. "Miller?" Sterling stared at him, betrayed. "What are you doing?" "I'm logging this incident, Richard," Miller said, his voice steady, though his hands were trembling slightly. "You falsified a security threat. You profiled a minor, and you delayed the flight without cause. I've already messaged dispatch. They are sending a replacement captain from the reserve pool. He's at gate C4 right now." Sterling's face turned a violent shade of purple. "You traitor! I'll have your license for this." "No." Marcus Vance stepped in, crossing his arms over his orange flight suit. "You won't be having anyone's license. Now the officers are waiting." Marcus gestured to the jet bridge. The 2 police officers, who had been watching the exchange with wide eyes, stepped back onto the plane. They weren't coming for Maya this time. "Captain Sterling," the older officer said, his tone strictly professional. "We need you to grab your flight bag and step off the aircraft. Pan Atlantic Operations has requested you be escorted to the chief pilot's office immediately." "Escorted?" Sterling spat. "I'm not a criminal." "Then stop acting like one," the woman in cashmere shouted from seat 3B. "Get off! Get off! Get off!" A few passengers in economy, who had caught wind of what was happening, started chanting. It was a low rumble that grew louder. Sterling looked at the sea of faces. He grabbed his heavy leather flight bag from the cockpit, shoving past Miller, slamming his shoulder into the younger pilot. He marched down the aisle, head down, but his eyes were darting around, furious, calculating. As he passed Marcus, Sterling stopped. He leaned in close, so only Marcus could hear. "You think you won because you have a fancy jacket and a badge?" Sterling whispered. "I know people, Vance. Powerful people. You embarrassed me. I'm going to sue you, your daughter, and NASA for everything you've got. You'll be flying a desk in a basement by next week." Marcus didn't blink. He didn't even look at Sterling. He just brushed an imaginary speck of dust off his NASA patch. "Move along, driver." Sterling seethed. He stormed out of the plane. The moment he stepped into the terminal, he saw them. Smartphones. Dozens of them. The passengers in the waiting area had pressed their phones against the glass. They had recorded the police dragging Maya off. And now, they were recording the captain being escorted off by the same police. Sterling put his hand up to block his face, hurrying away, his legacy crumbling in real-time 4K resolution. Back on the plane, the atmosphere transformed instantly. "Maya," Marcus called out softly. Maya stepped back onto the plane, clutching the broken pieces of her gyroscope. Her eyes were red, but she held her head high. The entire first-class cabin erupted in applause. The man with the whiskey stood up and clapped. The flight attendant, Sarah, was openly crying. "I'm so sorry," Sarah said, rushing over with a warm towel and a fresh glass of orange juice. "I was so scared to stand up to him. I'm so sorry." "It's okay," Maya said quietly. "You were just doing your job." "Come on, kid," Marcus said, guiding her back to seat 1A. He took seat 1B next to her. "We have work to do. We have a presentation to save." As the new captain, a cheerful woman named Captain Hernandez, jogged onto the plane to cheers, Marcus pulled down the tray table. He pulled a soldering iron and a precision screwdriver kit from his own flight bag, tools of the trade for a mission specialist. "Okay," Marcus said, examining the shattered plastic. "The gimbal is cracked, and the wiring is severed. We have 3 hours to Houston. Can you fix it?" Maya wiped her eyes. She looked at the broken machine. She looked at her dad. The fear vanished, replaced by the cold, sharp focus of an engineer. "Pass me the soldering iron," she said. At 35,000 feet, While Maya was performing delicate surgery on a circuit board, the world below was exploding. The video of Sterling screaming at Maya had hit TikTok. It was titled, "Pilot Attacks Genius Teen, Gets Owned by NASA Dad." Within 1 hour, it had 2 million views. Within 2 hours, Fire Captain Sterling was the #1 trend on Twitter, X, in the United States. But Richard Sterling wasn't sitting idly by. In a high-end office in downtown Chicago, Sterling sat across from Jonathan Coyle. Coyle was a lawyer known as the Shark. He specialized in defamation and high-stakes corporate litigation. He was expensive, immoral, and exactly what Sterling needed. "It's bad, Richard," Coyle said, scrolling through the comments on a tablet. "They're calling you a racist, a misogynist, a bully. Pan-Atlantic stock is dipping." "I followed protocol," Sterling shouted, pacing the office. "She looked suspicious. And her father, he threatened me. He used his government status to intimidate a civilian pilot. That's abuse of power. That's a felony." Coyle looked up, a slow smile spreading across his face. "Abuse of power. Yes, we can work with that." Coyle stood up and walked to the window. "The internet loves a villain, but the media loves a fallen hero even more. We need to flip the narrative. We don't apologize. We attack. How? We release a statement," Coyle said. "We say the girl was verbally abusive to the crew first. Witnesses are unreliable. We can find someone to say they heard something. We say the father used his rank to bypass security protocols and stormed a secure aircraft. We paint you as the defender of post-9/11 safety, who was steamrolled by the woke mob and a government elite." Sterling nodded, liking the sound of that. "And the girl? We find dirt," Coyle said coldly. "School records, disciplinary issues, anything. We make her look like a troublemaker. By the time they land in Houston, I want a restraining order waiting for Colonel Vance. If he has a pending legal action for assault, his security clearance gets suspended automatically pending investigation." Sterling smiled. "He's in the air right now. He can't defend himself." "Exactly." Coyle picked up the phone. "I'm calling TMZ and Fox News. Get your uniform cleaned, Richard. You're going on TV." Meanwhile, up in the air, the Wi-Fi had been turned back on. Marcus's phone started buzzing. Then it started vibrating continuously. Messages from colleagues, family, and random numbers. "Marcus, did you see the news?" "Dude, you're trending." "Headquarters is asking for a report." Marcus frowned. He opened a news app. The headline made his blood run cold. "NASA colonel accused of air rage. Pilot claims assault in cockpit." The article cited sources close to the investigation, claiming that Marcus had physically shoved the pilot and threatened to blow up his career using government connections. It made no mention of Sterling's behavior. It painted Marcus as an unhinged father, abusing his power. "Dad?" Maya looked up from her soldering. "What's wrong?" Marcus turned the screen off quickly. "Nothing, honey. Just work stuff. How's the stabilizer?" I think I got it," Maya said, holding up the device. She flipped a switch. The gyroscope spun up with a soft whir. It floated perfectly in her hand, compensating for the turbulence of the plane. "It works." "That's my girl," Marcus forced a smile. But inside his stomach was knotting. He knew how the game was played. He was a black man in a high position. One slip-up, one accusation of aggression, and they would strip him of everything. The Artemis mission, the Mars project, his pension. He looked out the window at the clouds. Sterling was playing dirty. Marcus needed help. He opened his secure messaging app. He scrolled past his family chat and found a contact he hadn't used in 10 years. Contact, the Fixer, Washington, D.C. Marcus typed, "I need a favor, a big one. I'm being framed by a pilot and a PR firm, landing in Houston in 90 mins. I need the airport tapes from O'Hare, the raw footage, before they delete it. 3 dots appeared instantly. On it. Sit tight, Colonel. The landing in Houston was smooth, ironically, much smoother than Sterling's landings usually were. But as the plane taxied to the gate, Marcus saw the flashing lights through the window. Not just police this time. News vans, satellite trucks, a sea of reporters. "Dad," Maya asked, her voice trembling. "Are they here for us?" "Put your hood up, Maya," Marcus said, his voice low and serious. "Put your sunglasses on. Hold my hand. Do not say a word to anyone. Not one word. Why? Because that pilot is trying to destroy us so he doesn't have to apologize," Marcus said. But he picked the wrong family. The fasten seatbelt sign turned off. "Ladies and gentlemen," Captain Hernandez announced, "we have been asked to hold everyone on board for a moment to allow local authorities to board." The passengers groaned. 2 Houston PD officers boarded, but behind them was a man in a sharp suit holding a leather folder. He wasn't police. He was a process server. They walked straight to row 1. "Marcus Vance?" the suit asked. "That's me. You are being served with a temporary restraining order and a civil suit for defamation and assault filed by Captain Richard Sterling," the man said, shoving the papers into Marcus's chest. "And," he turned to the police officer, "my client alleges that this man is a flight risk and a danger to the public." The officer looked apologetic. "Colonel Vance, we aren't arresting you, but we need to take a statement. There's been a media circus." "Let's go," Marcus said, standing up. He shielded Maya with his body. They walked off the plane and into the terminal. It was a gauntlet. "Colonel Vance, did you punch the pilot?" "Maya, is it true you assaulted a flight attendant?" "Colonel, is NASA going to fire you?" Microphones were shoved in their faces. Flashes blinded them. It was overwhelming. Maya buried her face in her father's flight jacket. Marcus stopped. He saw a reporter from a major network broadcasting live. He looked directly into the camera lens. "My daughter," Marcus said, his voice booming over the reporters, silencing them instantly, "is a 17-year-old genius who built a gyroscope in her bedroom. Captain Sterling tried to kick her off a plane because of what she looks like. Anything else you hear is a lie, and we will prove it." He pushed through the crowd, dragging Maya toward the exit. They made it to the curb where a rental car was waiting. They jumped in. Marcus locked the doors. Maya was hyperventilating. "Dad, they said I assaulted someone. I didn't. I promise." "I know, baby. I know." Marcus started the car. His hands were gripping the wheel so hard the leather creaked. "Where are we going?" Maya asked. "The competition starts in 2 hours." Marcus looked at her. He looked at the papers on the passenger seat, the lawsuit, the threat to his career. If he went to the competition, the press would follow. It would be a circus. It might ruin her chances. But if they hid, Sterling won. "We are going to the competition," Marcus said. "You are going to present that gyroscope. You are going to win. And while you do that, I'm going to end Richard Sterling's career forever." His phone buzzed. It was the fixer. "I got the tapes. And Colonel, you're going to want to see audio file number 4 from the cockpit voice recorder. The new pilot's union rep sent it over." Sterling forgot to turn off the hot mic when he called his lawyer. Marcus smiled. It was a dangerous, shark-like smile. "Maya," Marcus said, pulling out into traffic, "connect your phone to the car audio. I want you to listen to something." The George R. Brown Convention Center in Houston was buzzing with the nervous energy of 300 of the brightest young minds in the country. But the atmosphere around Booth 42 was different. It wasn't just nervous, It was suffocating. Maya stood behind her display table. The repaired gyroscope sat on a velvet cushion, humming softly. She had covered the cracks in the casing with NASA stickers, making it look like battle damage from a space mission rather than the result of a police assault. Reporters were kept behind a velvet rope by venue security, but their cameras were zoomed in on her. Every time she took a sip of water, shutters clicked. "Ignore them," Marcus whispered, standing beside her like a bodyguard. He was still in his flight suit, but he had zipped it up, looking every inch the commander. "Focus on the physics. The math doesn't care about the news. The math is true." "I'm shaking, Dad," Maya admitted. "Good. That's adrenaline. Use it." 3 judges approached. One of them was Dr. Elena Rostova, the head of propulsion at SpaceX. She was Maya's idol. "Maya Vance?" Dr. Rostova asked, glancing at the swarm of press behind the ropes. "I've heard a lot about you today. I hope your work speaks as loudly as the internet does." "It does," Maya said, her voice steadying. She triggered the activation sequence. The gyroscope spun up. It levitated within its magnetic cradle. Maya grabbed the table and shook it violently. The device didn't wobble. It stayed perfectly locked in place relative to the horizon. "This represents a 40% weight reduction from current commercial stabilizers," Maya explained, launching into a pitch, "by using a 3D printed honeycomb lattice structure." As she spoke, Marcus stepped away. He had received a text from the Fixer. "It's done. The audio is synced. The security footage is 4K. Sterling is holding a press conference at the Hilton across the street in 20 minutes. He's going to announce he's suing NASA for emotional distress." Marcus looked at his daughter. She was glowing, confident, answering Dr. Rostova's questions with brilliance. She was safe. She was doing what she was born to do. Now, it was time for Marcus to do what he was born to do: eliminate the threat. He turned to the security guard. "Watch her. Don't let anyone near her." "Yes, Colonel." Marcus walked out of the convention center and headed toward the Hilton. He didn't run. He walked with the terrifying purpose of a man who knows exactly where the nuclear launch button is. The ballroom at the Hilton was packed. Captain Richard Sterling stood at a podium, flanked by his lawyer, Jonathan Coyle, and a weeping woman who claimed to be his wife. She was actually his sister, but it played better for the cameras. "I have served the skies for 30 years, Sterling said, reading from a script. "I have never been so humiliated. This man, this government bully, used his rank to terrorize my crew, and his daughter was out of control. I was protecting my passengers." Coyle stepped up to the mic. "We are filing a $50 million lawsuit against Colonel Vance and the Pan-Atlantic Airline for wrongful termination. We demand justice for Captain Sterling, a hero who is being cancelled by the woke mob." The reporters scribbled furiously. The narrative was shifting. Sterling looked like the victim. "We will be taking questions now," Coyle said. "I have a question." A deep voice boomed from the back of the room. The cameras swung around. Marcus Vance stood in the double doors. He held a tablet in his hand. He connected it wirelessly to the room's AV system, a trick he'd learned from the tech guys at Mission Control. "Colonel Vance," Coyle sneered, "you have a lot of nerve showing up here. You'll be hearing from our process server." "I don't think so," Marcus said, walking down the center aisle. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. "You see, Captain Sterling made a mistake, a rookie mistake." Marcus stopped 10 feet from the podium. He looked Sterling in the eye. Sterling was sweating. "When you called your lawyer from the cockpit to plot how to frame my daughter," Marcus said, his voice calm, "you forgot that the cockpit voice recorder, the black box, runs on a loop. It records even when the engines are off, as long as the battery bus is active. Sterling's face went white. That's confidential flight data. Not when the airline releases it to the FAA as part of a criminal investigation, Marcus said. And not when I FOIA request it as a concerned parent. Marcus tapped his tablet. The giant screens behind Sterling, which had been displaying his Pilot Wings logo, suddenly went black. Then a waveform appeared. Audio began to play over the ballroom speakers. It was crystal clear. Listen, Jonathan, I don't care if she has a ticket. She's some ghetto kid in a hoodie. It looks bad for the first-class aesthetic. I want her gone. Sterling's voice. Just find a reason, Richard. Say she was aggressive. Did she touch you? Coyle's voice. No, she's crying. It's pathetic. But I'll tell the cops she had a weapon. She's got some weird machine. I'll say it looked like a bomb. That'll scare the passengers into backing me up. Good. Do it. We'll spin it later. The audio cut off. The room was so silent you could hear the air conditioning humming. Every reporter in the room turned to look at Sterling. The hero pilot was trembling. Lawyer Jonathan Coyle was already packing his briefcase, inching away from his client. But wait, Marcus said. There's more. The screen changed. It was video footage from the jet bridge camera. It showed the police dragging a crying Maya. It showed Sterling standing in the doorway, laughing. It showed him kicking her canvas bag across the floor. Marcus pointed at the screen. That is you, assaulting a minor's property and filing a false police report. That is a felony, Sterling. Sterling gripped the podium. It was stress. I was under duress. You're done, Marcus said. He turned to the cameras. Pan Atlantic has already fired him. The FAA has suspended his license pending revocation, and the FBI is waiting in the lobby to discuss the false bomb threat you called in. Marcus dropped the mic. Literally. He turned around and walked out. Behind him, the flashbulbs went crazy, but this time they were capturing the end of Richard Sterling. The silence in the Hilton ballroom was heavier than gravity. It pressed down on Captain Richard Sterling, squeezing the air out of his lungs. The audio recording of his own voice, arrogant, conspiratorial, and damning, had just finished echoing off the walls, but the sound seemed to hang in the air like toxic smoke. Sterling looked out at the sea of reporters. Moments ago, they had been looking at him with sympathy, their pens poised to record his tale of victimization. Now their expressions had curdled into disgust. The camera lenses, which he had thought were his spotlight, now looked like the barrels of a firing squad. His lawyer, Jonathan Coyle, was the first to move. He didn't step forward to defend his client. He didn't object. He simply clicked his briefcase shut with a sharp snap that sounded like a judge's gavel. "Jonathan," Sterling whispered, his voice cracking, "do something. Tell them it's out of context." Coyle looked at Sterling with eyes devoid of warmth. "I can't represent you, Richard. You implicated me in a conspiracy to file a false federal report. I'm not your lawyer anymore. I'm a witness." Coyle turned and walked off the stage, leaving Sterling alone at the podium. "Wait." Sterling reached out, but his hand grasped only empty air. Then came the questions. They weren't polite anymore. "Captain Sterling, did you knowingly plant a false bomb threat?" "Captain, is it true you have a history of profiling passengers? Are you aware that federal agents are entering the lobby right now?" Sterling blinked, the sweat stinging his eyes. Federal agents? The double doors at the back of the ballroom swung open again. This time, it wasn't a grieving father or a teenage girl. It was 4 agents wearing windbreakers emblazoned with FBI. They moved with a terrifying lack of urgency, the kind of walk used by predators who know the prey has nowhere to run. Marcus Vance stood to the side, his arms crossed, watching the scene unfold with cold, impassive satisfaction. He didn't smile. This wasn't funny. It was necessary. The lead agent stepped onto the stage. He didn't use a microphone. He didn't need one. "Richard Sterling," the agent said, flashing a badge. "You are under arrest for interference with flight crew members and attendants, making false statements to federal law enforcement, and deprivation of civil rights under color of law." "You can't do this!" Sterling shrieked as they spun him around. The handcuffs clicked, a cold, metallic sound that signaled the end of his career, his reputation, and his freedom. "I am a senior captain. I am a hero." "You have the right to remain silent," the agent droned, tightening the cuffs. "I suggest you use it." As they marched Sterling down the aisle, the cameras flashed in a frenzy, blinding him. He tried to hide his face, but there was nowhere to hide. The live stream was already beaming his disgrace to millions of screens around the world. The comment section on the video was moving so fast it was a blur of "justice served" and "bye-bye, Captain." Marcus watched him go. He felt a hand on his shoulder. It was the fixer, who had slipped into the room unnoticed. "It's done, Colonel," he said quietly. "Pan Atlantic just issued a press release. They're disavowing him. They've also offered to fully fund Maya's college tuition as a gesture of goodwill." Marcus nodded slowly. "Good. But we're not done yet. We have a competition to win." The walk back to the George R. Brown Convention Center felt different. The oppressive heat of the Houston afternoon seemed to have lifted. The air felt lighter. When Marcus returned to booth 42, he found Maya exactly where he had left her. She was surrounded by a crowd. But this wasn't a mob of vultures. It was a crowd of admirers. Other students, teachers, and engineers were leaning in, listening intently as she explained the load-bearing capacity of her 3D printed gimbal. She looked up and saw her dad. Her eyes asked the question, "Is it over?" Marcus gave a single, firm nod. Maya let out a breath she felt like she'd been holding since Chicago. Her shoulders dropped. She smiled, a real, radiant smile. "So," Dr. Rostova, the SpaceX judge, said, drawing Maya's attention back, "you claim this stabilizer can handle G-forces in excess of 8 Gs without losing calibration. That's ambitious for a high school project." "It's not just a claim," Maya said, her voice ringing with newfound confidence. "The gyroscopic frame is modeled after the inner ear structure of a peregrine falcon. It naturally dampens vibration. I can show you the math." "Please," Dr. Rostova smiled. "Show me the math." For the next 2 hours, Maya was in her element. She wasn't the girl in the hoodie or the suspect in 1A. She was an engineer. She spoke the language of physics, a language where prejudice didn't exist, where the only thing that mattered was whether the equation balanced, and her equations balanced perfectly. Finally, the lights in the hall dimmed. A spotlight hit the main stage. The chatter died down. It was time for the awards. The announcer, a distinguished man in a tuxedo, walked to the microphone. "We have seen incredible work today," he began. "Innovations in robotics, in chemistry, in AI. But one project stood out. Not just for its technical complexity, but for the resilience of its creator." Marcus stood in the shadows at the back of the hall, his heart hammering against his ribs. "Engineering is about solving problems," the announcer continued. "It is about looking at a broken system and finding a way to fix it. Today's winner didn't just fix a machine, she fixed a misconception. She reminded us that genius doesn't have a dress code." The crowd murmured. They knew. For her revolutionary design of a biomimetic, gyroscopic stabilizer, the announcer's voice rose, the winner of the Apollo Grand Prize is Maya Vance. The room exploded. It wasn't polite applause. It was a roar. 300 students stomped their feet. Maya froze for a second, stunned. Then she walked up the stairs to the stage. The spotlight blinded her, but she felt warm. She accepted the heavy glass trophy, etched with the image of a rocket launching into the stars. She leaned into the microphone. She looked out at the sea of faces. "Thank you," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. I had a rough flight getting here." Laughter rippled through the crowd. "A man told me that I didn't look like I belonged in the front," Maya continued, her grip on the podium tightening. "He looked at my clothes and my skin and decided I was clutter. He broke my machine." She looked down at the trophy, seeing her reflection in the glass. "But my dad told me something. He told me that gravity pulls on everyone the same way. It doesn't care who you are, and neither does science. If you do the work, if you know the truth, you can fly. This is for everyone who has ever been told to sit in the back." She raised the trophy high. "We are the pilots now." 3 months later. The morning sun glinted off the polished fuselage of Air Force One, sitting on the tarmac at Andrews Air Force Base. But Maya wasn't looking at the president's plane yet. She was looking at her dad. Marcus was adjusting his tie in the reflection of the terminal window. He wasn't wearing his flight suit today. He was in a sharp, navy blue suit, a lapel pin of the American flag catching the light. "Stop fidgeting, Dad," Maya teased, adjusting her own blazer. She wore a new hoodie underneath it, a stylish, silk-lined one. It was her signature look now. "I'm not fidgeting," Marcus grumbled. "I'm just checking flight surfaces." They were on their way to the White House. The president had seen the video. He had seen the award ceremony. He wanted to meet the girl who had stood up to prejudice with a soldering iron. And he wanted to talk to Marcus about heading up the new Youth Aerospace Initiative. "Flight 11 to Washington, D.C. Boarding now," the agent called out. "We invite our special guests to board first." They walked down the jet bridge. The smell of jet fuel hit them, but this time it didn't smell like fear. It smelled like opportunity. As they reached the door of the plane, the pilot was waiting. It wasn't Sterling. It was a woman, looking sharp in her uniform. She saw Marcus and Maya approaching. Her eyes widened. "Colonel Vance? Maya Vance?" she asked. "That's us," Marcus smiled. The pilot extended her hand to Maya first. "I just wanted to say, I watched your video. I have a daughter. She's 10. She wants to build rockets because of you. Thank you." Maya took the pilot's hand. "Tell her to keep building." "Welcome aboard," the pilot said, stepping aside. "Seat 1A is ready for you, and I promise, no delays today." Maya walked into the cabin. She found her seat. She didn't slide into it tentatively this time. She sat down like she owned it. She pulled out her tablet, already sketching designs for her next invention, a solar sail for deep space travel. Marcus sat down next to her. He looked at his daughter, bathed in the golden light of the morning sun streaming through the porthole. "You ready?" Marcus asked. Maya looked out the window, watching the ground crew bustling below. She thought of Sterling, sitting in a cell somewhere, grounded forever by his own hate. Then she looked up at the endless blue sky. "Yeah, Dad," she smiled, tapping her screen. "Cleared for takeoff." The engines roared, a sound of pure power. As the wheels left the ground, leaving the earth far below, Maya Vance didn't look back. She was too busy looking at the stars. Sometimes, the biggest turbulence in life doesn't come from the weather. It comes from people who think they own the sky. Captain Sterling thought his uniform gave him the right to judge, but he forgot the most important law of physics. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. He pushed Maya down, and the universe pushed back, hard. Maya didn't just win a trophy. she proved that dignity, intelligence, and the truth are heavier than any ego. And Marcus showed us that a real father doesn't just buy a ticket, he clears the runway. If you enjoyed this story of justice served cold at 30,000 feet, make sure to hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. Comment first class below if you think Maya should start her own rocket company. Thanks for watching.